Welcome to the Behavior Code. I'm Maria.
And I'm Gabriel. And today's topic, honestly, it's one of those that kind of hits close to home, like uncomfortably close.
Yeah, no kidding. We're talking about judgment. Specifically, why the things people judge the hardest often reveal exactly what they secretly want.
Right. And before anyone turns us off thinking, oh, this isn't about me, it is. It's about all of us, no exceptions.
Ourselves very much included. All right, let's get into it.
So, the opening line we kept coming back to when we were prepping this episode was the things people judge most harshly often reveal what they secretly want. And I think the reason that lands is because, you've seen it, right? You've definitely seen it.
Oh, 100%. Think about it. Someone who constantly mocks wealthy people or who makes snide comments every time they see someone living in a big house, driving a nice car. And you start to wonder, wait, is this actually about ethics or is it something else entirely?
And same thing with attractive people, right? Like there's this whole phenomenon where someone who gets a lot of attention, especially online, just gets torn apart, picked apart. And it's like, okay, what is actually going on there?
Or relationships. People who are weirdly, aggressively vocal about how marriage is a scam or how love is just a social construct.
And then you find out they've been single for 6 years and desperately want a partner. Like, surprise.
It's kind of painful when you see it from the outside. But here's the thing, it's a pattern, and it's deeply human. So let's actually unpack why it happens.
Okay, so the first layer of this is just the fact that humans compare themselves constantly. Like, it's not even a choice, it's wired in.
Yeah, and there's actually a reason for that. Evolutionarily, social status mattered. Knowing where you stood in the group, that was survival information. It was literally life or death at some point.
So our brains never really stop doing that. We're still scanning, comparing, even when there's no actual threat.
Right. And the tricky part is when you see someone who has something you want, something you've maybe told yourself you don't care about or can't have or shouldn't want, that person becomes a kind of mirror.
Oof. Yeah, and nobody likes looking in a mirror when they're not ready for it.
Exactly. So instead of sitting with that discomfort, which by the way is hard, the brain reaches for the much easier option criticism. If I can make that person bad, then I don't have to feel bad about not being them.
It's like a shortcut, a very emotionally efficient shortcut that makes everything worse in the long run, but yeah, in the moment, it worked.
And that's why a lot of judgment doesn't actually feel rational when you look at it closely, because it isn't. It's emotional, it's protective, it's the psyche doing a little damage control.
Which brings us to projection. And okay, I know Freud gets a bad rap these days for a lot of stuff, rightfully so in some cases, but the idea of psychological projection, that one holds up.
It really does. The basic concept is that we take the feelings or desires that feel too uncomfortable to own and we assign them to someone else. We project them outward.
So instead of sitting with, I really want that, we go, that person is terrible for having that.
Right. And it works because once it's out there, once it's about them, you don't have to examine it internally anymore.
Classic example, luxury. Like you see someone post a photo on a private jet or at some five-star resort, and there's a subset of people who just lose it. The comments get vicious.
And some of that is genuine critique of wealth inequality, that's real. But some of it is just, I want that, and I don't know what to do with that feeling.
Same thing with confident women. There's this specific flavor of judgment that gets directed at women who are visibly ambitious, or self-assured, or unapologetically successful.
And it tends to come loudest from people who feel stuck, who maybe buried their own ambition a long time ago because it felt too risky or too selfish or whatever the story was.
So they judge the person who didn't bury it, because that person is evidence that it was possible.
Which is uncomfortable. The phrase that keeps coming to mind is, I hate that can mean, I wish I had that. Those two things can be the exact same feeling wearing different clothes.
Okay, so let's talk about envy specifically, because I think envy is one of the most misunderstood emotions out there. Like, nobody wants to call it envy.
Nobody, because envy feels shameful. It feels like an admission that you want something you don't have, and our culture is really not kind to that kind of vulnerability.
So instead, envy transforms. It puts on a costume, and the most common costumes are sarcasm, moral superiority, gossip, subtle digs.
The moral superiority one is so interesting to me because it's the most convincing disguise. Like, I'm not jealous, I just have standards, I just have values. What they're doing is wrong.
And sometimes that's true. Sometimes it genuinely is a values thing. But the intensity of the reaction is often a tell. Like, if you're 10 times more upset about someone else's life choices than make sense given any actual harm to you.
That's worth sitting with.
Exactly. And gossip is another big one. The people who just cannot stop talking about a specific person. Everything comes back to that one person or that one thing.
Which is a classic sign. People rarely obsess over things they truly don't care about. Like, if I genuinely didn't care, I wouldn't keep bringing it up, right?
Right. Indifference is quiet. Obsession is loud. And that loudness, the repetition, the fixation, that's often envy looking for an outlet.
And then social media comes along and just amplifies all of this by a factor of, I don't know, 1,000?
At least, because now you're not just comparing yourself to your neighbors or your coworkers. You're comparing yourself to everyone, constantly, in real time, on a screen you carry in your pocket.
And the things that get attacked most on social media, beauty, travel, relationships, success, those aren't random. Those are exactly the things people want most and feel most denied.
Right. Someone posts a photo from Santorini and the comments are unhinged. Not because the photo did anything wrong, but because it triggered something.
It's a visible lifestyle, and visible lifestyles are emotional triggers. They force a comparison. They say, someone has this thing you want, and you have to do something with that feeling.
And a lot of people choose attack the thing, discredit it, minimize it, because that's faster and safer than going, what does this reaction tell me about myself?
Which, and I want to say this gently, is completely understandable. The self-reflection route is harder. It takes practice. It takes a certain willingness to be uncomfortable.
Okay, the success one is so specific, and I think it needs its own moment because there's something particular about watching someone succeed that goes beyond just wanting what they have.
Oh, totally. Because success doesn't just say, I have something you don't. It says, and here's the painful part, it was possible.
Yes, that's the thing. Like, ambition exposes excuses. If you've been telling yourself for years that your dream was unrealistic, or the timing wasn't right, or the market was too competitive, and then someone else just does it,
That's a problem for your narrative.
it's a direct challenge to your story about why you haven't. And that's incredibly uncomfortable. So the easier response is to find a reason why their success doesn't count. They got lucky, they had help, they sold out, something.
And I think this is why successful people often lose old friends. Not because the friendship was fake, but because proximity to success is destabilizing for people who haven't done the inner work.
It forces self-reflection in a way that's really hard to avoid when it's someone you actually know. Like a celebrity succeeding is abstract, but your college roommate who had the same starting point as you and is now doing incredible things?
That's close. That's real. And that can turn into resentment really fast if you're not careful.
Which, again, completely human, not a character flaw, but worth understanding.
Let's talk about relationships for a second, because this is where it gets really tender.
Yeah, the relationship version of this is oof, because people judge happy couples so harshly sometimes. And the way that plays out can be so subtle.
It's rarely, I'm jealous of your relationship. It's more like, that's not real. Nobody's actually that happy. Or, just wait, they'll fall apart.
Or the marriage is a trap narrative, like very vocal about how marriage is an outdated institution, how it restricts freedom, how smart people don't do it.
And then, they're quietly craving connection and commitment and just don't know how to get there.
Or people who judge others for being too independent, like she's too focused on her career, she'll end up alone. And it's like, is that concern or is it that independence is threatening something?
It reveals an unmet need. That's the through line. Harsh relationship criticism almost always reveals an unmet emotional need in the critic. whether that's longing or fear or grief over something they lost or never had.
Criticism often reveals pain. That's such a reframe for how I think about people who come at me or come at things I care about.
Right? And I'm not saying weaponize that. I'm not saying, oh, you're just jealous, dismiss. That's not it. I'm saying understand it, have compassion for it, even when it's directed at you.
So let's talk about how to actually spot this, because once you know what to look for, it's kind of everywhere.
The biggest sign is emotional intensity that doesn't match the stakes. Like if someone is way more upset about a stranger's Instagram post than any rational reason would explain.
That's a tell.
Repeated criticism is another one. If someone brings up the same thing over and over, same person, same topic, same complaint, they're not processing it, they're circling it.
Obsession, which sounds dramatic, but I mean it in a clinical sense. Like there's a fixation, a magnetic pull to keep coming back to the specific thing that supposedly bothers them.
And the phrase I love, and I think it's worth repeating, people rarely obsess over things they truly don't care about. If you truly didn't care, you'd stop. The obsession is information.
There's also fixation on one very specific trait. Like it's not a general criticism, it's laser focused on one particular thing. The money, the looks, the confidence, the relationship, one thing over and over.
Which suggests that specific thing is hitting a nerve. Something about that exact quality is activating something internal.
Yeah, and I want to be clear, noticing this in other people is interesting, but the real work is noticing it in yourself. Like, what do I keep coming back to? What do I keep criticizing that I can't seem to let go of?
That's the uncomfortable question, and honestly, the most useful one.
Okay, so what do you do when you're on the receiving end of this? Because that's real. That's something a lot of people deal with.
First thing, don't internalize it. Like, that's easier said than done, I know, but the criticism says very little about you and a lot about the person delivering it.
Right. You have to be able to separate truth from projection. Because some feedback is valid, some criticism is genuinely useful. But projection? Projection is about them. It's wearing the mask of being about you.
And learning to tell the difference, that's actually a skill. It takes practice. You have to ask yourself, is this criticism specific and constructive, or is it emotional and vague? Because those usually feel different.
The other thing I'd say is understand the emotional mirror dynamic. If someone is really triggered by your success or your confidence or your relationship, you haven't done anything wrong. You've just reminded them of something they're carrying.
And staying grounded in that is huge, because the instinct when someone comes at you is either to shrink, to make yourself smaller so you're less of a target, or to get defensive and reactive.
And neither of those is great.
Neither of those is great. The middle path is I see what's happening here, I don't need to absorb it, and I don't need to fight it either.
There's also something really worth saying about being disliked, because sometimes being disliked is actually a signal of growth. Like, if the same person who celebrated you when you were stuck starts resenting you now that you're moving, that's data.
It's uncomfortable data, but it's data. And it doesn't mean you did something wrong, it might mean you did something right.
Okay, so as we wrap up, the idea that's sitting with me is this. What someone condemns may reveal their own hidden hunger, and I think that's worth holding gently. Not as a weapon, not as a way to dismiss criticism, but as a lens.
Yeah, because if you can look at judgment, whether it's coming from someone else or from yourself, and ask what desire might be hiding in here, that's a really different conversation than just reacting to it.
It turns judgment into a map, a weird, uncomfortable, kind of embarrassing map, but a map nonetheless.
And the closing question we want to leave you with is this. What have you judged that secretly fascinated you? Like, sit with that. Really sit with it.
Because the answer might surprise you, and it might actually point you somewhere worth going.
That's the behavior code for today. Thank you so much for listening. If this episode got you thinking, share it with someone you think needs to hear it, and we'll see you next time.
Take care, everyone.